Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going straight into the heart of a really powerful argument from the world of, well, psychology and criminology.
Mhm.
We are focusing on Chapter 1, which the author calls Where Silence is Born. It's from Dr. Siegfried Castell-Britton's incredible book, Dangerous Minds.
And this is a deep dive, unlike a lot of others we've done, because Dr. Britton isn't just analyzing crime itself. He's analyzing its biography.
It's biography.
Yeah, he starts by challenging this really old, really convenient idea we all have about violence,
Which
that
is,
some people are just, born evil.
right, the bad seed idea.
Hmm.
But instead of that, Dr. Britton's work, which spans everything from correctional facilities to vulnerable communities in places like Medellin, it suggests something much more difficult to accept.
Mhm.
He's arguing that the violence we see isn't innate, it's actually devastating side effect. It's a consequence of profound emotional neglect.
Precisely. The whole mission of his research, which he really lays out in this first chapter, is to shift our understanding. He wants us to see that crime doesn't just spring from an impulse, it grows from an absence.
An absence.
Yeah, to get the rage, you first have to confront the wound that came before it. And that wound, Dr. Britton argues, is fundamentally caused by silence.
Silence as a weapon, silence as a teacher. It's a pretty compelling idea.
It is.
So the central question we're exploring, using Dr. Britton's research as our map, is this. How does this pervasive silence, the kind that lives in the home, the school, and society itself, how does it ultimately create and instruct a mind to become dangerous?
Okay, let's unpack this.
So where does Dr. Britton start? What's the foundation?
Well, he sets the stage with a truly stunning thesis. He states it very clearly. Every act of violence begins in a place where words were never allowed to live. He's arguing that the absence of communication, the failure to ever really be heard, is the foundational building block of criminality. Crime, in his view, is just a destructive response to the deep, aching absence of listening.
That reframes the entire discussion, doesn't it? It means the danger doesn't start when someone picks up a weapon.
No.
It starts when a voice is consistently, shut down. So help us understand the critical transformation that Dr. Britton describes. How does this silence mutate into something aggressive?
He details a kind of psychological corrosion. When affection and validation fade, and a person's attempts to communicate their needs are just ignored, communication doesn't just stop. It finds a new, distorted outlet.
So understanding is replaced by what?
The language of defense. The inner world becomes a fortified fortress.
The child learns to substitute self-protection for self-expression. What does Dr. Britton's work say about the internal monologue of a child who's going through this?
The psychological impact is profound because that child is denied the vocabulary of feeling.
The vocabulary of feeling.
Yeah, for example, they are never taught the crucial lesson that anger can often be a displaced form of sadness or fear or frustration. They lack the tools to name the complex emotion, so it all gets filed under the simplest, most explosive category: rage.
That seems like such an essential distinction. If you can't articulate the root pain, you can only express the surface effect.
Exactly. And in this environment of silence, a defensive inner voice starts to take root. It whispers this toxic lesson Dr. Britton saw in countless biographies. Trust no one, reveal nothing. The world is your enemy.
And the tragedy is?
The tragedy is that the child who can't speak their pain ends up hearing only their own escalating rage echoing back at them.
That idea that the inner world becomes the enemy is chilling. It makes Dr. Britton's strongest assertion incredibly resonant. He says that when you study the psychology of offenders, you have to begin with the silence that came first. He says there is no crime without biography, no rage without wound. You have to trace that emotional history.
And that trace, Dr. Britton finds, almost always leads back to the home. He's looking for that prelude of abandonment or humiliation or just lovelessness. The final act might be complex, but the initial teaching is simple. Children learn what they live.
Okay, so let's transition into that. The first classroom of crime, the family unit. Dr. Britton argues the psychology of crime begins squarely with the psychology of the home. How does he describe the transmission mechanism for this silence?
He introduces this powerful concept of emotional inheritance. Dr. Britton observed that silence passes down through generations, almost like a surname.
Like a surname.
The grandfather who never spoke about his trauma, the father who never listened to his kids, the son who then learns to solve problems with fists because words were proven to be useless. The pattern just reinforces itself until it becomes an unquestioned identity.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, if you were raised in a house where vulnerability was punished or ignored, you inherit the belief that silence is survival.
Absolutely. And Dr. Britton found that breaking this cycle takes enormous courage. Many of the young people he worked with, they feared words opening up, admitting weakness, far more than they feared any kind of institutional punishment. Silence felt safer.
So what exactly does the silent home teach the child, according to Dr. Britton? What's the curriculum there?
He cites a clear, devastating lesson plan. If children live rejection, they learn to reject. If they live violence, they learn to wound. And if they live indifference, they learn not to feel.
That last one, learning not to feel, that seems critical.
It is. Indifference becomes a survival tool. It's emotional armor, built layer by layer from disappointment and, broken promises.
And if feeling is dangerous, then the quickest route to safety is shutting down empathy. And if you shut down empathy for yourself, it's not a large leap to shut it down for others.
That's the devastating connection Dr. Britton draws. The silence of the home creates the perfect breeding ground for this. Aggression, under this framework, it's fundamentally a distorted way of protecting what has already been wounded.
Wow.
So the home produces both victims, who internalize the pain, and offenders, who externalize it. Or both are born from the exact same absence of listening.
Now, to ground all this, to make it really tangible, Dr. Britton gives us the case of Matteo in Chapter 1. Tell us about Matteo, because this is where the theory really hits the street.
Matteo is a 12-year-old boy in Medellin, and his biography is heartbreakingly common. He sells candies after school to support his 5 younger siblings. His mother is exhausted. His father is lost to addiction.
So he's already carrying an adult's burden?
Completely. Dr. Brittany paints this vivid picture. He notes that their little room smells of dampness and sadness. Matteo carries this immense weight without any of the support an adult would have.
And Matteo's reality, that sadness and that burden, that's what he carries with him into the second potential source of silence in the school.
Exactly. Matteo's story is Dr. Britton's perfect illustration of how institutions fail. Matteo is that silent child, the one who's withdrawn, who sits at the last desk in the class. He's exhausted, he's preoccupied with his family's survival, so he's not engaged with, algebra.
He's invisible.
He is. And the tragedy, Dr. Britton highlights, is that the teachers, who are often stressed themselves, they see him in the simplest terms. Distracted, lazy, careless. They see the symptom, not the cause.
Right.
So each time the school ignores his quiet suffering, each time they fail to ask why he's sitting in the back, they just confirm the lesson he already learned at home.
Which is?
That his voice and his pain do not matter.
So the institutional silence reinforces the familial silence. Education, which is supposed to teach him empathy and dialogue, instead teaches him that compliance is the only thing that's valued.
And that failure leads to this profound functional shift. I mean, if society won't look at you, how do you force it to see you? Dr. Britton recalls this powerful interview with a 17-year-old detainee. The boy confessed the heartbreaking motive behind his crime. He said, "When you feel invisible, anything you do to be seen seems right."
That redefines crime not as greed, but as a desperate plea for recognition. His theft wasn't just about taking an object.
No, it was about existence.
It was a way of shouting, "Look at me! Remember that I exist!"
It summarizes the migration of silence perfectly. The school failed, so the street takes over as the educator. But it teaches through pain and chaos. The gang, or the criminal network, offers the one thing the silent home and the indifferent school denied him.
Belonging.
Belonging, purpose, and visibility. Even if it's destructive visibility.
Dr. Britton's conclusion on this is really stark, isn't it? He's saying institutional failure directly contributes to violence.
It is, he says, and I quote, "Each time the school ignores the silence of a child, it helps to create a dangerous mind." The silence never just evaporates. It migrates from an internal wound to an external violent scream.
And this silence doesn't stop at the school walls. Dr. Britton moves seamlessly to the social layer, observing that it extends beyond the individual, becoming this collective, normalized fog, a collective silence that lets violence thrive.
Yeah, he provides a really specific and compelling example from his work detailing the vacuna.
The vacuna.
It literally translates to vaccine, but it's a local term for organized extortion, a protection tax that's become disguised as just a normal habit.
An extortion tax disguised as a way of life.
Yes, shopkeepers, drivers, families. They pay this tribute of fear, this vacuna, just to keep breathing, to stay open. And in doing so, they reinforce the idea that speaking up, that reporting it, is far more dangerous than just paying the price of silence.
So fear becomes an acceptable cost of doing business.
Exactly. But Dr. Britton also brings in some deep social psychology to explain how society's conscience adjusts to this.
Okay, how so?
Well, To explain how we justify living like this, he introduces Albert Bandura's concept of moral disengagement. This is the psychological trick where we justify something wrong because it seems inevitable. If the vicuna is just routine, then paying it isn't unethical anymore. It's just a rule of survival.
Society normalizes the abnormal.
And he partners that with Johann Galtung's idea of structural violence. That's a crucial term for his larger point.
So what does that teach us here?
Structural violence is the kind of violence inflicted not by a person with a gun, but by omissions, by inequalities, by silent routines that become law. It's the violence in a system that denies opportunity or health care. Dr. Britton's diagnosis is that the real danger isn't the visible street violence.
It's the collective indifference.
It's the collective indifference. When a whole city turns a blind eye, their ears are just filled with the noise of their own survival and fear, and that leads to a collective blindness where crime flourishes because hope has already died.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Dr. Britton doesn't just give us a critique. He offers a path out of this three-layered silence. He shows us how communities can start to heal.
He does. He observes that the possibility of reparation, of fixing this, it exists in the communities that resist the silence.
For example,
The teachers who finally stop seeing the distraction and start listening to the child. The women who dare to speak up and report extortion, even while they're trembling with fear. Transformation begins where someone dares to listen.
And the practical path forward he advocates for, especially in the justice system, is restorative justice. What does that mean in Dr. Britton's view, especially when it comes to silence?
Restorative justice is the system that recognizes the offender is often the tragic product of a deforming environment, of an environment of silence and neglect. So healing and accountability, they have to happen through understanding and dialogue, not just through punitive isolation. It forces us to actually confront the silence.
It's a huge philosophical shift. It moves away from what punishment is deserved
To what harm was done and how do we repair it? Exactly. Dr. Britton wants us to internalize the essential truth that no one is born dangerous. Their crimes are often not declarations of hate, but pleas for recognition that have been ignored for years.
It comes back to being seen.
Always. He insists behind every crime there is a person, and behind every victim, another human being who also needs to be heard. The transformation of a dangerous mind can start with a single question asked with genuine concern.
So, what does this all mean for us?
Well, Dr. Britton leaves us with this powerful, integrated conclusion from Chapter 1. He talks about the convergence of these failures. The home keeps silent out of fear and neglect. The school keeps silent out of indifference and workload. And society keeps silent out of convenience and survival.
And these three silences converge.
They form a chain that teaches children one brutal lesson: how to survive in a hostile world. But crucially, not how to truly live, how to connect, how to thrive.
And he emphasizes that silence never just vanishes. It migrates. It always turns into a screen, whether that's internalized as depression or externalized as violence. So the transformation has to begin with the very act of listening that was once forbidden.
For you, our listener, Dr. Britton's work really forces us to look inward, to consider this concept of unspoken inheritance. What cycles of silence might you be repeating in your own home or your workplace or your community just because that's what was modeled for you?
And what courage would it take to break that chain? To choose the language of understanding over the comfort of indifference? That is a deep thought to sit with, the connection between the intimate biography of a child's pain and the broad structure of a society's violence. Thank you for diving deep into the origins of silence and rage with us today.